Welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast with your host, Alvin Bonds II. Join us each week as Alvin explores the relationship between leadership and families by interviewing leaders in different fields all over the world. Alvin believes that the success of tomorrow's leaders begins with the success of today's families.
Hello, and welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast. I am your host, Alvin Bonds II, and this is episode 30. Today, I interview Bri Seeley. But before we get to that interview, I invite you to reflect on your life. And particularly, I want to speak to the women right now. Bri, you'll discover from her interview, is an inspirational speaker for women, but she also has made the decision in her life to be child-free. Bri talks about her Huffington Post article that went viral when she shared her experiences and what it means to be child-free and some of the struggles that she has encountered in making that decision. Some of the speculation that people have made, some of the even doubt that she would change her mind regarding this decision. So I'm speaking to the women and encouraging them who have made a decision in their lives to be child-free, or if you have made a decision that you want to be a mother. Regardless of your decision, it's just that. It's your decision. Bri talks about helping women find their voice so they can be what they want in their lives and create masterpieces. Bri Seeley is an inspirational woman who supports women around the world to bring their visions to life. Bri is motivated by a deeply held belief that every woman deserves to live a life that inspires her, and Bri's work reflects this deep remembering of the possibility, nay, inevitability that our desires hold. Through her book, podcast, and 6-month training, Permission to Leap will guide you through the process of leaping from the day you commit to the day you land softly on the other side. A catalyst, speaker, and author, Bri is a regular contributor for the Huffington Post and Influencive and is known by many for her tell it like it is, out-of-the-box guidance that creates massive and epic changes in every woman she encounters. Bri has been featured on NBC's The Today Show, Forbes, Inc., Medium, PBS, and Free Enterprise. Bri received the Outstanding Small Business Award from the Los Angeles Mayor's Office and the Small Business Development Center in 2016. It's an honor to have Bri on for the podcast. Bri, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Would you take a moment and tell us about you?
Hi, so I am a coach, a speaker, and an author, and my particular zone of genius is that I help people bring their visions to life. What I found is a lot of people have a really difficult time turning ideas into reality because there's a lot of unknown in between the conceptualization of an idea and the actual creation of it. And because there's so much unknown, people just have a really hard time with trusting that the process is moving forward exactly as it needs to, with being able to hold space for things that they can't see and can't touch, which we are so conditioned to believe that what we can see and touch in our physical world is real. And if we can't see it and we can't touch it, that means it's not real. And because of that, the leap process gets really tricky because the majority of it, from what I've written about, the first 4 of the 6 phases, the 6 steps, are inner work. Taking a leap is not like a big external grand gesture. It's a lot of inner work. You have to become the person before you can do the thing. And it's just not how it's perceived in our world. And so there's a lot of confusion, a lot of doubts, a lot of fears and hesitations around the process.
That's so powerful. And tell us, how did you get involved in this? What inspired you along this journey?
I have kind of been taking leaps for the last 20 years. So the first conscious leap I remember taking was when I was 14. And so I don't think it's something that I chose. I feel like it's something that kind of chose me. And I just say that I've essentially been following the breadcrumbs of life and just kind of figuring out what's next and what inspires me and what I'm saying yes to. And it's taken me some really great, amazing places. I lived in Italy for 2 years studying fashion. I owned my own fashion brand for 7 years. Have lived in Washington. I currently live in Los Angeles. I'm getting ready to travel a whole bunch and become bi-coastal. I get to serve and talk to the most amazing people in the world. I get to speak. It's really cool. So I didn't necessarily choose this. I just feel like this is what I'm here for.
Yeah. You mentioned at 14, you kind of discovered this. What in your life kind of helped you, identify this as your course? Because a lot of people struggle with identifying, what is their purpose? What is their vision? What was that for you?
So it's not that I identified when I was 14 that this is what I wanted to do. It's more that now that I'm doing this, I've looked back and been like, oh, it was there all along.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't seeing it.
Yes.
And so when people don't know what they're quote unquote supposed to do or here for or whatever, I always say, look backwards. Who have you always been your entire life? I've always been someone that stood up and said, I want what I want, and I deserve what I want, and I'm going to create what I want.
Yeah.
And now because of that, that's what I do every day.
Yeah.
All the time. Because it was just my mom and I, and so she didn't care, and she would just default to me like, what do you want? What movie do you want to watch? What do you want for dinner? What do you want to do today? And I got to choose, and then I just have continued being like, what do I want in life? What do I want? And what I've learned is that I've worked with a lot of older women, and I was working with a woman, I think she's close to 50, and she had never answered that question for herself before in her life. What do I want? A lot of us just take what we're given. We take, the whatever life hands us, and we respond to it instead of taking a purposeful stance of creating what we want.
Yes. I think that is so powerful. And as a counselor, I have an opportunity to work with different people, different families, and a lot of people can look back at their lives and zoom in on the hard times or struggles or even disappointments. I love this idea of looking back and discovering who you always been. That is so powerful. And would you take a moment and tell us about your book, Permission to Leap? How did that come to you?
So it did literally come to me. I have never really sought out. I kind of assumed at some point that I would write a book.
Yeah.
But last year I was in meditation and I got a really clear message that said, you're writing a book this year. Wow. And you're leaving Los Angeles for 2 weeks in June to go write it. And I was like, that's really specific and also incredibly vague.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it was just a process of kind of like, removing all the dust, essentially, to figure out, what am I writing? Where am I going for 2 weeks in June to go write this book?
Yes.
And all that stuff. So I feel like it was a little easier for me because from the get-go, I knew that I was simply the channel through which it was coming.
Okay.
It's, yes, my name is on it. Yes, I wrote it, but I also believe that it's not my book.
Yeah.
I just happened to be the human that it picked. And I got the privilege of having it come to me. So most of it came through meditation. Most of the writing process was done in meditation or just through simply opening up space and channeling. Yeah.
That is so cool. And I love that you just allow yourself to be present. And that's so inspirational. Could you tell us about that writing process? Because a lot of people may want to write a book and, may not know where to start or even feel like they have something worth, putting on paper. Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah. So, I would really say that my process started about 3 years ago when I started coaching.
Yeah.
And the main crux of the process that was so important was getting over exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Remembering that I had something to say, or, and again, that it wasn't even me having something to say. It was me getting out of my own way for the inspiration, the words to come through me. But
Yes.
I, 3 years ago when I started this, didn't believe, like, I had a podcast at one point with a business partner, and at the beginning I said, I don't know if I could ever do a podcast, because what would I say? Like, people aren't going to listen to me talk. Nothing I have to say matters. And I had to go through the inner exploration and the healing work within myself to remember my truth. And my truth is that what I have to say does matter. With all of the stuff going on in our country,
Yes.
I've really had a moment where I can't pretend like I don't have a voice anymore.
Yes.
I don't get the privilege of sitting on the sidelines and just watching things go down.
Mm-hmm.
I have had to remember and really stand in my truth that I have a power within me to create immense change for women in this world.
Yes.
And by remembering that, I've been able to now have 2 podcasts and write a book. And, I write for the Huffington Post. I write for Influencive. All of these other things, right? But those have only come because I've been willing to do the inner work.
Yes.
And so anyone looking to write a book or want to get out there and do things, my invitation is to first remember that you're worthy of whatever it is that you desire, and do that healing inner work. Because if you don't do that, no matter if you write the world's best book, have the world's best podcast, or the world's best blog, it will never be enough. And so do the healing work first. The book, the podcast, all that stuff, it'll come. But do yourself a favor and get through that healing stuff before you start taking action.
I love that. And what I'd love to hear is that the inspiration or the direction for your book, came through you meditating. And, mindfulness and just being present is something that I practice and encourage every, person that I see. Is that something that came naturally to you, just, being present, being in the moment, or is that something you had to work on?
It's definitely something I had to work on. I think I first meditated. I think my first meditation was 9 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few came very easy to me. They were guided meditations. And so it was much easier for me to be present inside if someone else was telling me what to do and what to focus on and how to move through the meditation.
Okay.
But it's taken me 10 years. Now I'm able to turn on like solfeggio tones and just sit in peace, sit in silence, and get really good, powerful, clear messages.
Yes.
But that's only come from a decade of practice. And so the thing that I always remind people is, 1, not all meditation looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting started with meditation, try silent meditation, try guided meditation, try chanting with mantras, try, visualizations, try all sorts of different things to see what works for you. And remember that meditating doesn't have to be an hour long. Yeah. You can meditate for 3 minutes, and there are plenty of apps on the market to help you with that. So get into, dip your toe in it as long as you're doing it. If you were to do it for, say, 3 minutes a day, every day for a year, that would create so much momentum and resiliency within you, as opposed to, say, if you were to think that you had to do it for an hour and it had to look a certain way and you just ended up not doing it at all, right? So start small and definitely try out all the different kinds of meditations there are. There are probably, there have to be millions of meditations on YouTube. And just, throw one on. I will periodically go through some and be like, listen to the first few minutes and be like, nope, don't like this one, on to the next one. And I just, you have to find what works for you, and not every meditation is going to work for you. Yes.
I love that. And what is so encouraging is that it didn't happen overnight. And that's something that a lot of people, look to or expect, instant gratification, instant results. And I'm glad that you shared that with us, that it took time. And you talked about really having a voice and speaking up. And ironically, I was reading the news today, and Michaela Maroney, I was reading about her story, the one of the Olympics, and it was discovered or came out that she had been molested, for years by her doctor, and it just really it was heartbreaking. But I understand how important individuals' voices are, but most importantly, women's voices. Can you tell us how how you became, I guess, a voice for women? How did you discover that's something that you really wanted to or needed to do?
I think it was in 2014 was like really my first glimpse at this. I had been invited to start writing for the Huffington Post by Ariana Huffington, and had written a few articles that they were fine, whatever, they were fine. And then I wrote one that was terrifying to me. It was a story I had never shared, ever. My mom knew and my best friend knew, but like no one else knew. My grandparents didn't know. And here I was writing this article on the Huffington Post.
Yeah.
Scared the bejesus out of me. But I hit submit, and then I didn't hear anything for a week.
Really?
And usually they approve them within 24 hours. And I was like, oh God, this is bad. They're going to deny it, like all the stories. Turns out they were just waiting to publish it for a Saturday. And then it went viral.
Wow.
Like I woke up and it had shares and likes and comments. I mean, it was bananas. And the most poignant part about it was, so it was about me becoming child-free. So 5 years ago, I've known for my entire life I don't want to have children.
Yeah.
Always known it. And 5 years ago, I had surgery so that I can't have children.
Okay.
And as a child-free woman, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of judgment, a lot of misunderstandings. And I just decided to write an article about what it's really like. How my boyfriend in college would tell me all the time, patronizingly. It was almost like he was like patting me on the head and being like, oh, that's cute. Oh. You'll change your mind. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And it was like, no, I'm a good.
Yes.
And I'm not going to change my mind. Like, this is legit something that I want and know about myself. So I wrote this article about my perspective and what it's been like and the conversations and judgments I've had and received. And I got so many messages from women.
Yes.
And women that were younger than me saying, I thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one. Women that would message me and say, I didn't even know that this was an option for me. Women that had had surgery 30 years ago and literally never told anyone ever until they read my article. And I think that was really the moment where I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like my words, my presence, my being is allowing other women the chance to be themselves.
Yes.
By me taking a stand and doing it first, it's giving them permission to do it in their lives.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of unfolded over the last 3.5 years since then. But I think that was really the first kind of glimpse, the first opening that I was capable of that.
I love that. That's so powerful, so powerful. I love listening to your story and your book. It really edifies your being. You've just given yourself permission, and by telling your story, you're giving other women permission to lead, permission to be themselves, permission to stand up, permission to have a voice. I love that. Would you talk to us about what your plan is to continue to share that message with people? Because you've become a thought leader, you've become an influencer. What's your plan in continuing to get that word out to people?
Yeah, my top, I would say, my top two things that I'm really focusing on right now at the beginning of the year is one, I just hired a publicist, which I'm very excited about. My goal is to be traveling all over the country this year.
Yeah.
And, be booking radio shows and morning shows and, news segments and stuff like that, because I really feel like there's a lot of women that literally don't know that there's anything else available to them.
Yeah.
And that's not okay with me.
Yes.
Like that's just not okay. And I have an opportunity to show them that there's something different out there for them if they want it. So that's one of my things that I'm most excited about this year. The other thing is I have a 6-month training that goes hand in hand with the book.
Yes.
That give women that support, because it's honestly, quite frankly, scary to do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the training, it's going to be a community. It'll start small and it'll continue growing, but I see myself serving up to 80 women at a time.
Wow.
In that training. And it's a 6-month training. And so I want that to just kind of be, part of my legacy. And then my goal is, once I have reached some more of my financial goals, is to be able to open foundations.
Yes.
I want to be able to open a foundation for women's reproductive health and education. Hopefully be offering free products and stuff to women that can't afford it. Really offering like women's sexuality, like health and education and resources, and supporting victims of sex trafficking to get back into the world. And like, that's really the legacy that I'm building.
Yeah.
And as I get there, I also get to help other women give themselves permission to create what it is that they're desiring as well.
Yeah. That is such an amazing plan you have, and I love to, and it's exciting. And I was raised by a single mother, so it's very, very important to me that women are supported, that they are applauded. Is something that, as you said, that all over the world we're struggling with, and you are a voice for women. So I'm so glad to hear that. Would you take a moment and tell us about your own individual philosophy of leadership? You have a, very, very clear plan. Tell us what that looks like for you as far as leadership.
As a leader, for me, I just keep remembering that in order to give other people permission, I have to go first. And so that's kind of always been my thing. Like, even as I was writing this book, and granted, I've taken so many leaps over the last 20 years. But as I was writing this book, I had to go through that whole leap process again. And I kept bargaining with the universe, being like, really? I really got to go through this again? Like, can't I just be an expert on this by now? Because I'm like, jokingly, at the same time, I know that I have to go through these things. Like, this is what gives me the perspective to be able to support other women through their journeys. And so for me, being a leader is really about going first and like testing the waters and making sure it's, quote unquote, safe for other women. Not that it's not safe, but, so yeah, I guess that's how I lead. And one of my personal philosophies is I would never recommend anything to any of my clients that I wasn't willing to do myself. And so I think that's part of what makes me a great leader, is that I'm not telling people to go out and do these things, but I'm like, but I'm above that, like I'm in the trenches with people. I actually just had a conversation about leadership with a girlfriend on my Facebook Live this morning, and she was talking about how the traditional forms of leadership is where the leader sits like at the top of the pyramid and essentially blasts information out to all the people beneath them, right?
Yes.
But the new paradigm of leadership is that leaders are actually in the back, right? Like, we're in the back encouraging and pushing everyone else forward in front of us. And I think that that's really a beautiful visual. And I think it is what's going to help. I don't think we'll ever break the glass ceiling, but I think that it's going to help women get out of the building and stop living under the glass ceiling. And I think it's what's going to really help transform corporations into being more altruistic versus more greedy, right?
I love that, the metaphor of just getting out of the building. That's so powerful. It's empowering for women. I'm curious to know what or who has influenced this mindset of leadership for you.
I mean, the women that have really shaped my journey the most are my mom and my grandma. I don't know if it's necessarily a leadership spin on things, or more of just them constantly encouraging me to know what's possible. And I think because I look at the world from a place of possibility, whether I'm speaking about leadership or I'm speaking about, women's health, reproductive rights, sexuality, blah, 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 blah. Like, I look at everything from this perspective of what's possible.
Yes.
Versus, a lot of people want to look at the glass ceiling conversation and talk about how broken it is, right? And I'm like, I understand that. I get that that's happening right now. And I don't even want to take the energy to have that conversation because I don't want to talk about things that are broken.
Yeah.
I don't. I want to talk about what's on the other side of that. Where are we going from here? What are we creating? How are we shifting the conversation? Because us sitting around talking about how it's broken is a waste of my time and energy.
Yes. And where would you encourage someone to start? If someone believes the same thing as you, they're tired of having the conversation without any action, what's the first step that person can take to actually bringing this into fruition, to creating something, to taking that leap?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something where you're looking to get more involved in leadership and make changes and things like that, I would say, start wherever you're comfortable. If you're comfortable jumping right in and going all in, then absolutely do that. If you're more comfortable maybe joining a few organizations or getting involved with a few things, or bringing into your life the kinds of people that you need to have these conversations with that are going to have that same forward-thinking attitude, that want to be change makers in the world. Like, bring those people in because you're going to need them on your journey. And then, of course, the first step to any leap is just commitment.
Yes.
It's really just saying, I'm in. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm in. And I trust that however this is going to go, I'm showing up for it. And that's that.
Yeah. Well, Bri, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we close?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. If someone wanted to reach out to you or wanted to take your course, where would they need to go?
The best place to find me is on my website, and that's briseeley.com. You can also find me, the best place to have a conversation with me is either on Twitter or on Facebook, either on my business page or my group. And you can find anything just by looking up Bri Seeley.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, as well as providing a rating and review. Every week, I will interview a different leader and invite them to share with us their views and perspective on the relationship between leadership and family. Be sure to visit my website. It's www.alvinbonds2nd.com. That's ALVINBONDSII.com. Have a great day.